Welcome to the We Hack Purple podcast, where each week we interview a different member of the information security industry to learn what it's like to do their jobs. Cybersecurity has so many cool different facets, features, all sorts of different types of things that we need to do to protect people, as well as the systems and the data that we represent. And so I'm your host, Tanya Janca, and this week we are going to have Barbara Schachner on, and she is a security architect. I'm very interested to hear all about this. As you might have known, the last several few weeks, we have been sponsored by ThreadFix, who are powered by Denim Group, and we really, really appreciate their support. But without further ado, you're probably all thinking the same thing. Tanya stops talking and bring on Barbara. Well, here is Barbara. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Barbara.
Hello, Tanya. Thanks a lot for having me on the show. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you for saying yes. So you are a security architect. Can you tell me what that's like, or what does a security architect do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I'm a security architect, but I'm also the team lead for security architecture and testing. So like in 40% of my job, I'm doing security architecture topics where I discuss a lot with developers, software architects, and product managers about the features they are building and the new services they are introducing. And I try to put on my hacker's hat, try to understand how the things are going to work. And I try to find the things that need to be improved so that the things cannot be that easily hacked. And then in like 30% of my job, I'm doing the team lead topics where I'm working with my team on improving topics. And the rest of like 30%, I'm also contributing to improving our overall product security program. So like I'm looking at our vulnerability handling workflows and see whether we can improve anything. I look at our vulnerability KPIs to identify topics where we have, let's say, bigger issues that we need to work on. And yeah, that's actually my job.
That's awesome. I've never had a chance to work somewhere where we had a full-time security architect, so that, especially when I was a dev, that would have been amazing to be able to say, like, I'm building this app. Is that okay? So it would be really nice to be able to work with someone that actually can show me the way. It's always been like figuring it out a lot on your own, and having a resource like that sounds so valuable. So what is a day like in the life of a security architect? Like, do you have to make lots of phone calls? Do you go to lots of meetings? Do you sit there just whiteboarding things and throwing stuff? Or what do you do day to day?
Yeah, so basically the nice thing, but also challenging thing of the job is that, no day is like the other. So when you come in the office in the morning, you never know what is awaiting for you. So typically the first thing what I do in the morning is I look whether anything urgent or important has been coming up over the night or in the morning. So I take a look at current vulnerabilities and our dashboards, emails, whether there's anything that needs immediate attention. And if there is something, then, you just handle it accordingly. And if there's nothing, I can start my day with, a little bit of socializing with the team. In the mornings, we have several stand-ups. I have a stand-up in my team. Then we have stand-ups with the different security teams to exchange on current topics. And I'm also attending a stand-up where it's about the current state of our production system and whether there's anything from the security side that people should be aware of. And then I also use the morning hours rather to sync with my team and have one-on-ones with the team. And then the afternoons, I typically have a lot of meetings. So there's different ways I like to interact with the teams. So on the one hand, there are many people coming up with questions. As you just said, as a developer, you would have liked to have someone to talk to. So yeah, it's just many people approaching me and scheduling meetings like half an hour or an hour, where they just want to talk about what they plan to do, and they want to know, is this okay? Have we thought about everything that's needed, or is there anything else we need to take care of? So that's a lot of the time I'm spending. But then I also have some teams where I know they are working on very important and very security sensitive features. So with those teams, I interact in a more constant manner. I regularly attend, for example, their review and planning meetings so that I know what topics are coming up, what have they done in the last sprint, is everything okay, or is there anything where we should dig deeper? And then I also have other teams where I just think like on a monthly basis, and either with management or team leads or architects, where we have maybe a list of topics that we want to work on over time, and we regularly take a look whether the priorities are still the same, how things are progressing, and whether they need some kind of advice on any of this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's the different ways of interacting with people. So my calendar is typically pretty much filled with meeting, but that's also the part of the job that I really like very much, that you can talk to people and that you can also see when you explain things to them about risks and why they should do things in a different way, you also get good feedback back, and you see things happening like security improving. And that's really a cool feeling.
Oh, that's awesome. So I was a dev for a very long time, and then I switched over and I was a pen tester for a bit, and then I switched to application security. And application security, you spend some time doing code and hands-on things and other times with people. And when I was a pen tester, it was lonely. I was like, I need to speak to other humans. This sucks. And so I love this idea of you need to kind of be a social butterfly a bit to be a good architect. I like this. Because they need your brain. This is good. What types of personality traits do you think someone needs to do your job well? Like, do they need to be a good listener?
I think, first of all, you need to be very curious. You need to have a drive to understand how things are working, why things are working well, why something is an issue, how you can do it better. And also, you always should think a step further. Like if you have a finding on a certain area, you can fix it on that one place, or you can look further and think about, well, what's the root cause? Is the root cause a technical problem? Is it maybe a management, timing, resource problem? That's also something you need to address. Or if it's a technical problem, can we solve it in another way which makes it more reliable? Like when also in the future people change the code again, that the problem doesn't happen again. So I think curiosity is very important.
Yeah.
But then also, as you already said, things like communicating and listening. So I think empathy is very important. You need to try to understand, also the pain of the people. Like developers have so many things to care about, and security is just one of them. And if you think their security is their most important topic every day, then you are not meeting them where they are,
Yeah.
So you have to understand their pain, and there are maybe times where you can stress more on topics, and there are other times when they are under a lot of pressure, where you have to think whether some topics maybe can wait for a while until you do that. And so I think for that you have to listen, of course, very well. You have to talk to people. You also have to listen a little bit between the lines, I think.
Yeah.
There are also things that people don't tell you, or people are not saying, and that can also mean there is an issue there, You also need to build a trustful relationships so that they are telling you those things, which makes it much easier to work on security. And of course, you have to be a good communicator. So you have to be able to explain them why they have to do something. So my experience is, if you can make people understand why there is a risk, why it would be better to do it another way, then it's hardly a problem that they take care of the topic. But only when they don't know why they should do it, and it's just, like the 50th entry in an Excel file they have to check, then it's hard to get them motivated.
Yeah.
So I think it's really a lot about communication. So you have to like communication and you have to be good in it.
Do you feel, because it sounds like you're also doing kind of negotiation and persuasion a bit. Like you're kind of, like you're explaining the risk and then getting kind of like their buy-in, like maybe you're convincing them. Do you feel like that's part of it too, maybe a little bit?
Yeah, I would call this like leading without authority and influencing people, right? Because you want to get security topics tackled, but you don't have any authority over the people you have to work with. So the only way you can get things done is by making people care, motivate people, and explain why they should do it, and then you get their buy-in. And then it's hardly an issue to get things done if they understand the reason. Because my experience is that everyone wants to build a great product and wants to build good code. And also they don't want to have to get up when there is an incident. So if they understand that it's making their life easier, then it's really easy to get things done.
I should use that when I'm convincing people, Barbara. That's such a great idea. It's like, well, you wouldn't want to have to get up in the middle of the night for a security incident, would you? That's a great idea.
You probably wouldn't want to have to explain to the customer why this happened.
Oh, this is good. Yeah. This is good.
So I also like or in general, our approach is that people building things are also responsible for what they build. So they are also responsible. Developers who build code, they are also responsible when that code runs in production. So also security is included in that responsibility. And every product architect is also responsible for the security of the architecture he builds. And we are just enabling them to do it in the right way. And we are there as a sparring partner and, to have a second eye on things. Yeah. But it's not our responsibility to do everything right. Because if you have the philosophy in a company that security is just the job of the security team, then, it just will never work out.
Yeah, we can't do it unless everyone's on board. Yeah, I agree.
Right.
What types of technical skills does someone need to have in order to become a security architect? Because you can't start at an architect, right? Can you? Or you have to build up to it?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend starting as an architect. So I think you really need a strong technical foundation there. So I think either it would help to have a strong background either in pen testing as a basis where you really get to understand all the details about the vulnerabilities, how you can exploit things. And you also already think a little bit as a pen tester probably about how you can avoid those things. So that's one basis you can have, but you can also, on the other hand, come from a software engineering point where you know your stuff in software engineering, and then in addition you build up security know-how and you think about how you can build your software in a secure way. But I would really recommend to have at least 5 years of experience, really somewhere where you are a technical expert, and then you add to that with experience on project management, working with people, getting things done, influencing people, politics, strategy. So there's a lot of things you just learn over experience, I would say, and over time.
I agree with that too. Oh, that's good. Can someone take training to become a security architect? Is that like a thing that, or what training would you want someone to go on and learn, or what types of things would you want them to learn so that they could be a security architect?
So personally, I've done a university program for 5 years about information security. So I find that very helpful because you have a lot of time and really you cover a lot of topics and a lot of areas from security, like biometrics, forensics, incident handling, security processes, also security law, and of course all the technical things like network security, programming, etc. So if you have a chance to do that, I would definitely go for like a security program, at least 1 or 2 years somewhere, where you just get exposed to different topics and you get a broad overview. But yeah, sometimes maybe you don't have the chance to do that, and you have to build that up while working, and then you can definitely do some self-study. I would go for OWASP material, like looking at the OWASP cheat sheets, ASVS.
Yeah.
There are also some pretty good books. I would look for books about secure design principles.
I am supposed to mention this. Remember I told you I'd be really awkward?
That's a good one.
Alice and Bob Learn Application Security. I am supposed to mention this. This has a chapter about secure design. So there, I did it. Good job, Tanya, doing your marketing checkbox. Yes. Thank you, Barbara.
Right. So I'm sure that is a great basis also to get started on the topic.
Yeah, because I feel like to be a good security architect, you need to know like a little bit of many things, right? Because if you don't even understand what identity is, then how can you explain, oh, well, you need multi-factor here? Because if you don't know those things, then I've had security professionals tell me before, oh yeah, that's 2-factor authentication, but it's really a password and then security questions. I'm like, no, those are the same factor. Those are both things that you know. And I'm like, I can't ask that person questions anymore if they don't know that. So I feel like what you're saying,
right.
You have to know like a little bit of so many things to be able to
right. You should have a little bit of knowledge in all the different security domains, and then there should be some domains where you really have more detailed knowledge. Like web application security would definitely be an area where it's beneficial to have a deep knowledge. Also nowadays, cloud security is definitely a good topic to dig into. Network security used to be very important.
So you were saying earlier, if someone wants to be a security architect, that a really good path could potentially be, being a pen tester and learning all the security offensive side, because when you know how to exploit something, you usually understand it, or being a software developer and then kind of like learning the other rule set. What other types of work experience do you think could maybe help someone be a good to be a good security architect? You were mentioning maybe learning about project management, or it feels like you have to be good at everything to be a security architect. Am I overstating that by a lot?
I think over time you also have to learn to do things based on your personality. So you don't have to be good at everything, but you have to find out your strengths and how to do things in a way that you can create impact. And that can be very different for me than it is for you.
That's cool.
So that's one thing where I at least needed time to find out what works for me and what doesn't work. So that's definitely one thing. And when you ask about different kind of jobs that would help, personally I started out with penetration testing. Then I did 2 years of red teaming. So that adds some additional kind of thinking, because in penetration testing you take a very deep look at a particular target, and you think about how you can, with the time you have, identify as many things that should be improved as possible. But as a red teamer, you take a completely different look again, because there you really have to combine vulnerabilities from different systems to find your way in to the network, let's say, and then to move within the network and to really get to a target. So it's some different way of thinking where it's more about combining vulnerabilities, finding the weakest link in a system, and that definitely also helps to develop that kind of adversarial thinking that also helps to be a security architect.
Yes, that's
and
awesome.
I also worked for a while as a security officer, and that's actually not so different from a security architect in some ways, because there I also worked with service managers about how they can improve how their services are working. So parts of it were also pretty technical, where you discuss network setup, authentication topics, etc. But then there are also more organizational topics when you work as a security officer, where you have to fill out compliance checklists and you have to ensure that everything follows internal policies. And that's probably a little bit more in the job of a security officer than in the job of a security architect, because there you really focus on the technical work.
Nice.
But I guess it also helps if you would work as a security analyst and analyze security events. You would also get exposed to a lot of different information about what incidents could happen, what is a real problem, what is just looking like a problem. So that is definitely, I think, also a starting point for that kind of career.
Nice. This is really good advice, because it feels like if someone's working in any other area of security, that in some way it will probably help them when they're an architect someday. Like all of that experience
Definitely
adds up. Oh, that's good. Okay, so briefly, I am going to thank our sponsor. Our sponsor this week is ThreatFix, the most stupendous vulnerability management system this side of the galaxy. I told them I would say whatever they wanted, and that's the sentence they came up with, and I love it, because most of the sentences I have to say are boring, and ThreatFix is super fun. Okay, so I have way more questions, Barbara. So a question that we always ask is, does being a security architect pay well? So I don't mean please tell us how much you get paid. I mean, does it pay well? Like for how hard you have to work and how much knowledge and experience you have to have. And then the job that you get, is it good? Because some jobs people think get paid a lot and they don't. And some jobs get paid way more than people might realize. And so is being a security architect pretty darn good?
I think in the security area, it's a pretty good job. There's definitely a broad range, I think, of the salary you can get. But as it's a pretty senior role, you can be a senior or on a principal level, I would say. You can also earn a good salary with it. And I would, maybe if you want to compare it with like being a CISO, I think the top band of the security architect salary could be similar to the lower band of the CISO salary band. So
cool.
That's pretty cool. But as a CISO, of course, you have so much more responsibility and accountability. So I think a security architect job is really a good cost-benefit fit.
Yes, I was a CISO for 4 months, and I'm like, yes, all these gray hairs are named CISO. So it's hard. It's very hard. So do you feel that there's lots of opportunities in our industry for someone to become a security architect? Like, would you say there's lots of jobs, or some jobs, or they're really hard to come by?
I think there's pretty many jobs you could get. because it's very hard to find good security people anyway. So maybe you could choose the jobs, but it depends also a lot on what you want. If you want to work on really cool, interesting tech stuff, then of course you may look for a modern tech company, and it depends on how geographically flexible you are. You may not have really cool opportunities in your area, but if you are flexible, I think you have a lot of possibilities. And it also depends, I think, on whether you want to go deep in a topic. Then maybe you want to work as a consultant in the area of security architecture, where you really focus on one particular topic and you get projects in that area. Or you work for a really big company where you really have a lot of security architects and you can focus on a particular area. But if you rather want to go broad, then you have to get maybe a company that is just building up the topic and where you are one of the first security architects and you can just work on a wide variety of topics. So I think there are really many opportunities, but it depends also a lot on what exactly you would like to do.
That's exciting, because it depends on the job how many opportunities there are. Like, we had someone who was an open source intelligence gathering person, and there's not that many jobs in that field compared to security, because people keep building things, right? And then they need security architects, and they're just building stuff all the time. Those software developers, they build amazing things constantly, and they need Barbaras. I mean security architects to come and look at the things. So what would you say is the thing that you like the best about being a security architect?
So personally, I really like it a lot to work with people and also to get this kind of constant feedback about people understanding what you explain to them, people taking up your arguments, people really working on the topics. Also, like when you hear people argue about security topics, after a while you have worked with them, they argue like with your arguments, and then you really see that it has worked. And so that's really a cool part of the job. Also, personally, I've worked in defense. I've worked in offense. Now I'm rather on the defensive side. And I find this much more satisfactory, because on the offensive side, I always had the impression that it's always too late when you identify the things. So either the services are already built or they are already live, and changing them is so difficult. So I always wanted to get to an earlier stage where you can avoid the kind of problems already early on.
Yes.
And I find that much more fulfilling.
Oh, I love this. So I talk a lot about shifting security left or pushing security left. And what we mean is earlier. Like, we want someone like Barbara to review your architecture before you go and code everything and make a giant mistake that she could have helped with. I say this literally all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I think what's also important though is that whatever you can automate, you should automate. So an architect, should not talk about the things that you can do via tools. So like you can do static code analysis, you can do third-party library scans, you can do vulnerability scans, automate penetration tests, etc. So, and that's the things you shouldn't have to take care of as an architect. But as an architect, you should really talk to people about those things that you can't automate and that you need people for.
Yes. I literally earlier today, I was presenting to some people and it said, automate as much as humanly possible. And then in brackets, it says, in all parts of your life, not just this presentation, because that's how, I feel like there's a lot of me just nodding and being like, I agree with Barbara. I agree with Barbara. So now that we've heard the thing that you like the best about your job, what do you like the least about being a security architect?
Yeah, well, there's always that kind of residual risk you have. So we all know there's no 100% security. And even if you do your best to get things done, to get to the highest level of security you can, there's always things that can happen. And that's just the risk that comes with the job. And that's what you have to accept.
So no one has mentioned that yet on the show as the thing they like the least, of that it will never be 100% secure, and that like worry that we as security professionals feel. Like, I'm so terrified that one of my clients will have a data breach someday. And I'm like, what if it's not something I told them to do, like to protect? Or worse, what if it's something I told them to do and then they didn't do it and I should have pushed harder for the thing and I'm a failure? I think this is a security thing, like, that we don't talk about that much to people outside of security. So I'm glad.
And I think that's very important, because you also have to take that kind of risk as a security architect or security consultant officer. I think oftentimes people don't dare to say, or security people don't dare to say, that's okay, because they are afraid that they may miss something. Or, you have your internal checklists and all the best practices, and if not all of them are done, then you feel uneasy, but you also have to make these risk decisions. So what's really worth to invest in and what's not. And I have had discussions about things that are best practice, but in some cases they are just slowing down people, not making people able to operate things in a good way, or just taking too much time, etc. And you always have to make these balanced decisions. And there, as a security person, you have to help the teams to make the best decisions for that case. And that also sometimes means that speed, maintainability, extensibility is maybe more important than some of the nice to have security topics. But then not having all of them done makes security persons, of course, often feel not very good.
So true.
And it's our job to give people the best context so that they can make the smart decisions about what has to be done and what can be done later, for example.
I feel that this is a truth about security that a lot of us don't talk about. Like that ache of, I wish I could do more, or, the client, you give them the best information you can, and then they make a decision and you're like, I hate that decision you just made. Like, we could do better. And yeah, sometimes I feel...
But I'm also not... I'm also not saying that you should just let them make every decision. So you have to think about whether you have to put in a veto, kind of.
Yeah.
And then you have to be very strong about your opinion and have to discuss with people. But there's also many things where there is room for improvement. Maybe you cannot do that practice exactly in that best practice exactly in that way, but you find kind of mitigating controls in other areas, and then the risk is also acceptable.
Yeah, there's a lot of negotiating and compromising in security.
Right.
And I think if you're going to be good at it, it's a skill that you have to learn. Like, whenever I've worked with security people that just won't compromise at all, they stop getting invited to meetings and people stop asking.
Exactly.
And then you can't get your job done.
And I think, exactly, and I think so an important part of the job is also understanding the business and the use cases. So, because then you can understand where there's room for negotiation, what has to be supported, and where you can build your mitigating measures, let's say, around it. But if you really understand the business and what's their drivers and whether speed is more important or functionality at the moment, then you know the different levels that you can work on to bring the risk to an acceptable level. But if you just come with your 120 items checklist and you want everything done the way it's written down, then as you said, people stop talking to you.
Yeah, and they can go around us, and then life is very bad. I have more questions. So let's say someone's listening to this and they think, that sounds awesome. I want to be a security architect someday. What are some steps that they could take towards becoming a security architect?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I already said, some kind of education about security and a broad variety of security topics would be really a good foundation. And then I also think that mixture between offensive and defensive jobs is really a good step to take, and a collection of experiences to get the kind of knowledge you need and the kind of experience you need to work in that area.
Okay, so last question. If you were going to offer advice to someone, so someone's considering becoming a security architect, or they're like, I love this episode with Barbara, I want to be just like her when I grow up, or just maybe they've always wanted that and that's why they're watching. If you could give them a piece of advice, any piece of advice, what would it be?
I think always, or start thinking about what would be a good solution for this problem. So if you see a vulnerability, or if you're working on some security topics, what's really a good solution for this, and what's the best solution for this? And the best solution is often depending, on the individual situation. Mm-hmm. And you have to ensure maintainability, reliability of the solution. It should be easy so that people, don't fall around this again if they change the code later. And start that kind of discussions also with developers or penetration testers about what could be good ways to fix something. And I think over time, you just get more experience in that kind of discussions, and you can build up some experience in thinking about these topics in that way. And that will just that's a path to get used to that kind of thinking you need as a security architect.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that advice, because you don't really have to have the job to start looking at the architecture of every app you encounter. That's so true.
Right.
Did you find that once you became a security architect that you couldn't stop seeing security architecture issues that you wanted to help with? Like if you download a mobile app, are you oh, I see problems with this?
Yeah, I think in general, if you work in security, you get pretty paranoid. So yeah, I'm very defensive or conservative, in the kind of services I'm using privately. But again, it's a kind of risk decision. So yeah,
that's true.
You have to make your personal risk decisions, and some things you just accept the risk. In others, you look for mitigating measures like multi-factor authentication, and in others, you just don't use certain services. But I do have a smartphone.
I have one too. And thanks to my marketing team, as of 2 weeks ago, I have a Facebook account. So if people want to talk to my interns, they can become friends with me on Facebook, because I'm not logging into that evil platform.
Then it's just a decision about what kind of information you want to share there, right?
Yeah, marketing stuff. Yeah. I've already told my family, don't become friends with me. There's going to be nothing personal on there. Barbara Schachner, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been such a pleasure. And thank you for putting up with my technical difficulties at the beginning. You are such a charming guest. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much, Tanya. I was very happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who watched today and listened to the We Hack Purple podcast. I am Tanya Janca, your host. Every week we meet awesome humans like Barbara, who teach us about super cool jobs like being a security architect. And that's what we're trying to do here at We Hack Purple for this podcast, is let everyone know about the different types of jobs that exist so that they can consider if that's something that they want for themselves, something that they want their future to be. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. I would like to personally thank ThreadFix for being such an amazing sponsor as usual, always pouring us, being super awesome, and Barbara for being a really great guest. We actually had a lot of technical difficulties earlier, and she was wonderful and super patient with me as I troubleshot everything under the sun. So I hope to see you again next week, where we're going to do more interviews. And until then, may all the things you hack be purple.